Hi everyone, my name is Daphne Thomson and I help implement practical AI for local governments. Today I have the utmost pleasure to speak to Ali Hirji. He was actually one of my professors or lecturers at UFred, where I'm currently doing my MBA in artificial intelligence. And I just absolutely loved his classes and what we spoke about. So I was like, we have to have a conversation with him. He is super knowledgeable and he truly gave me a whole bunch of things to think about and to ponder. So Ali, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me. And that was a very, very gracious and kind introduction. But I must say that it was a pleasure to engage with you in the class, not just as a student, but really as a colleague. I got to learn a lot from your submissions as well. So thank you for having me. But more importantly, thank you for sharing your expertise with me.
Awesome. So let's get straight into it. The one thing that is currently quite a big conversation, or maybe a little bit low down now, is Bill 194. Now, I know that the Ontario's one is already passed. Quebec's one is kind of going there. There's a bit of confusion between the two. So can you chat about that and then add in what does it mean for the rest of for Canada?
So I'll address this in two ways. The first is what happens in Ontario doesn't stay in Ontario. Likewise, what happens in Quebec doesn't stay in Quebec. What you're seeing in terms of provincial governments creating and passing legislations around the use of AI is not unique to us in any way. There have been a variety of different use cases, a variety of different circumstances that is propelling the need for such legislation to come in. I don't think this is anything unusual. Yes, the use cases and the discussions and the controversies like Anthropic and the US government, or the use of data from a healthcare perspective and what we're hearing about coming out of Africa, etc. Every place that is touched by some level of digitalization is now discussing some policies, procedures, and processes around the control of AI. So let's be clear with this, is that Ontario or Quebec are not unique to seeing these kind of legislations coming up. Every country that we know of, to a degree, is grappling with these issues at a time when you're seeing an AI-based minister, a minister that is an AI in the EU areas.
Maybe we should just add that it's not an actual AI bot minister.
Yeah.
It's a real person.
Absolutely. It's a real person. So go figure where all of this is going towards. However, here's three things that I will tell everyone that you can draw from what we saw transpire with Bill 194. For one, it is very specific to the public sector. Fair enough. But the public sector response has not been around, we cannot adhere to some of these regulations or adhere to some of the testing frameworks and standards that are being posited by Bill 194. The response back has been, what are the resources that we need? I was just reading this morning on Engadget that I believe it's OpenAI, is it, that's looking to hire, or one of the larger AI LLM firms that's looking to hire another 4,000 engineers.
Yeah, I read that as well.
There you go.
And then there's all these protests trying to stop this AI development, yet the private sector is, no, it's on, we're doing this.
There you go. So the first thing that I'll tell everyone is that the response to Bill 194 was not, no, we cannot adhere to this. The idea was, we need resources. So the first thing that I'm going to advise everyone is, as everyone starts talking about AI will take away positions, yes, will it do it to some extent to certain types of roles? Very possible. But your human resources and specialist resources in AI will only start to increase, because everyone looked at Bill 194 and said, well, it looks like I'm going to need a chief AI officer. It looks like I'm going to need more folks on the governance side. So the first thing is that this does increase your resource count, and there is a funding ask that now a lot of public sector entities are going to be making in order to adhere to the adherence of this bill, number one. Number two, let me be absolutely clear with this. I am in agreement with the ethos of this bill, but it lays a certain level of pressure on the C-suite and on the engineers that are dealing with AI products. And that, in my opinion, is with reference to explainable AI. The ability to explain the outputs from your AI models And to have that level of transparency means that you need to have a certain level of observability and understanding of how your models make the predictions, decisions, and generative outputs that they do make. This renders a certain level of pressure in terms of how the C-suite, in terms of how engineers also understand their models. The need today for those of us deploying AI to be absolutely sure and have a strong grip on how our models operate is elevated with what Bill 194 proposes and is now in effect as well. How much pressure this is going to place on teams? Will this result in teams rethinking some of their AI deployments as well? I think so. But I don't think now you can simply, we've often heard at a variety of instances, people talk about AI like it's this black box. I don't think you're going to be able to necessarily work. So second, it places a new level of pressure on all of us managing teams and managing delivery cycles using AI. The third thing, I think you're going to see very, very soon that we're all going to have just kind of like your AI bill of materials, so on and so forth, a very, very astute and a very clear declaration of how and where we are using AI within our public sector operations. And again, the bill itself, I do not think the bill is intended to punish the use of AI. It is creating more transparency. It is pushing us to be more open. It is pushing us to be more understanding of how AI is being used in our organizations. But I think all of us who manage these delivery frameworks need to start realizing that the world of shadow AI is going to start creeping on us. And how much we are able to control the AI sprawl that happens in organizations and how much visibility we're going to have in all of this is really the three things that, from a Bill 194 perspective, keep me on edge. I'm not saying I'm afraid of this, but I think it's going to result in more human resource investment, more tooling investments, and a real strategic rethink about how we report on our use of AI.
I think you kind of hit a few very crucial things. The first thing is, yes, we are going to need new people stepping in with expertise, but the problem is we don't have that expertise right now. Like that, there's a massive skill shortage, specifically in the AI world, because it's kind of like the great equalizer, where this is new to everyone when they're not in the actual field, specifically in public sector. The IT guys, we usually only focus on the cybersecurity part of things and within hardware. So they're not really yet that expertise in AI. The other part of it, AI is starting to become a governance thing. It's no longer just in the IT department. It now falls on council as well, the same way as what it should be governed like the budget.
Yep.
Now, even though security or insurance companies are not currently putting that as a real requirement, they're kind of hinting that way. If we don't have minutes saying, hey, this is how a council was briefed on certain incidences, or how do we respond to certain stuff, or what are we doing, they don't see that as good governance anymore. And if we don't have a governance framework of saying, hey, this is how we make the decisions, we also have a little bit of an insurance issue. Now, my question to you is, big consulting firms are now, and this is, I see this practically as I work with municipalities and local government, is they are doing these massive frameworks of how to make a decision. And one, it's unattainable. So now it is kind of punishing local governments in actually implementing and deploying that. And two, it becomes such a big rigmarole to, just example, use Canva, which has an AI element to it, or Nana Banana, which those ones aren't really big risks. So what we're trying to start seeing is, where do we draw the line? Do we do a tiered approach of saying anything with a risk impact that is really very low, even though the risk of giving our information out is big, like a Nana Banana, very big, our info goes out, but the stuff that we use in there is public knowledge anyway.
Okay.
So how do we make this attainable so that the local government with 3 employees or 2 employees can actually make use of the benefits of AI to increase their capacity while sticking to these governance frameworks that is not overwhelming?
Great points and lots to unpack over there. And again, I'll stick to 3 pillars when I respond to this. The first thing is I want to address the comment you made about the skills shortage and just agree with you rather, but also add an addendum to that. I've said this in security for a while, and I'll say it in AI as well. In security, I've always said that there's no shortage of cybersecurity professionals, but there's a shortage of cybersecurity professionals who can communicate well. In the world of AI, thank you. In the world of I would flip the script a little bit there, saying that there's no shortage of AI professionals. There is a shortage of AI professionals who understand how to articulate the return on investment and the return on innovation. Now, what do I mean by this? You will see a lot of the graduates that you get and a lot of the folks working with AI, they can do, to put it very bluntly, some pretty amazing stuff with all the different tokens that they can access right now, with all of the different models that are accessible to them right now, with the vibe coding era that we find ourselves in. They can develop and deploy a lot of freaking amazing things. The problem is how do you actually integrate it into your workflows? The first thing that I would tell a small to medium municipality, especially the smaller ones, yes, AI will allow you to scale, but I think you need to go back to the basics. And one of the things that I've advised smaller businesses is completely look at all of your process and nuke it. Imagine that these processes were not there. You are building from scratch. Look at all of your workflows, your data flow diagrams, your workflow, your standard operating procedures. And go ahead.
Sorry, I just have to add that that's assuming that they have that in place.
Exactly. And if you don't have it in place, then a good opportunity to start that, where you have to map it all out, almost like you're going back. If you've ever watched Founder, the movie that recreates how McDonald's was formed and the controversy and all of that, that moment in the kitchen where the patty goes from here to here to here, and this is how the 2-minute process works. And in each of those moments, they were trying to see where they could make some enhancements to reduce the time from, by another 5 seconds to another 10 seconds. You have to outline all of this. You have to nuke what you have and imagine that you're starting from the ground up and draw out your data flow diagrams and draw out your workflow processes. And ask yourself what is done by a human. Can this be done with some form of automation? I think it comes down to that level of ground basics. Why do I say this? Is because before you even start thinking about what are the risks associated with all of this, etc., the moment you start looking at this and going, yeah, we can automate this, sure, but then sit with that consultant to say, okay, automating this, what could have been done by a human, sure, you might be able to remove, let's say, a $40,000 annual spend, but what does hosting this model that you want to access cost? What does the tokens associated with it cost? It's very quickly you'll realize that forget talking about risk, financially, it might blow out your budget to begin with if you just had human resources on it. So you need to be very practical about this. You have to go down to breaking down all of your processes. Number one. Number two, the reality is for small to medium, especially smaller municipalities who don't have that kind of a tax base within which and that kind of funding per capita to actually run these models, just because you can use AI doesn't mean that you have to. I have a lot of respect for those folks that say, look, for the operations that we have, we don't need some of these automations. It works well to have what we have in place. If you're a small municipality that is not looking at excessive, expansive amount of growth, sometimes you may have to say no to certain AI developments. And I think that takes a lot of courage and a lot of knowledge to make those decisions. If I'm not mistaken, the town of Innisfil, when they were tasked with the challenge of building out transit, immediately pushed back and instead went out to operationalize and to subsidize Uber usage within the community. They went against the grain. And I think sometimes you have to be prepared to make those decisions. Yes, anyone that comes to you and tells you AI can revolutionize the way you do work, yes, but will it necessarily bring down your costs? No. And if the return on investment isn't there, you have to be able to make those decisions. What Toronto does with AI cannot be the same as what a community up far north should be looking to do. I really, really caution against this whole, and this may sound very, very elementary, but this whole thing about, using AI for AI's sake, I mean, you just cannot subscribe to that philosophy. So I think first, breaking down your processes and understanding the true costs. Second, knowing what the costs are to maintain these, what the costs are to build on top of it, and realizing if it's actually sustainable for you is a very critical path. And I think Bill 194 and these kind of initiatives push you to dissect your AI deployments from that level. And then there's the third thing that you have to really, really keep in mind. And I think this can help the small municipalities. In my view, when I look at small municipalities, one of the things that has worked very well for them is collaboration with an association of other smaller municipalities. Now, my work has always been in the cybersecurity space for a very long time. And I remember was it 2 years ago, engaging with the then inaugural CISO of the city of Toronto, Kush Sharma. And he said there have been a lot of challenges that small municipalities face. I think he was referring to Wasaga Beach and a couple of others. And he said one of the things that they do is they start to pool a lot of their services. One of them that he suggested to me was around cyber insurance and how they were also looking at models to self-insure. I think that collaborative ethos between the smaller municipalities can render a lot of value and streamlining of services and centralizing services amongst multiple parties. This always comes with challenges, but I think if you're able to, as a small to medium municipality, get other players who can work in collaboration with you and you can share resources, then building out some of these expansive models which are tied to the strategy for your town, for the strategy for your municipality, I think then these things will make sense. If smaller municipalities are going to operate with AI as lone islands, unless they're going to be seeing a substantial growth in their tax base, I don't think any of these AI models will be of any value or will be able to be sustained in the long run. My 2 rupees of thought being very practical about it.
So you mentioned a lot of things that made me smile consistently, because I'm actually working with a municipality right now where I am literally taking and mapping out every single little thing that they do to see how we can implement AI. However, it is within the systems that they already have.
Yeah.
So trying to work with what they already have. Actually, the Microsoft environment has got so many things that is small wins, immediate wins. It's low-hanging fruit that you don't have to bring in anything else right now to help them with their flow or their invoicing redaction or their reconciliation or anything like that. Even their approval systems, to just take that manual labor out of the systems that they already have. So I agree with you on that point. Just implementing AI for AI's sake could be disastrous, because also what we're seeing is a lot of the time is people just revert back to what they've always done. So the AI adoption isn't actually that great. It's like, yeah, we're doing this and we're having a policy and we do it, like we've got all these things, but then the actual work is still, hey, will you please sign here? Like just come and sign here. So talking about the policy part, my personal opinion is that, and it's just my opinion, but to start, instead of having a lone standing AI policy, to rather have a look at your policies that you currently have with the local government and then look at it from an AI perspective. And the reason for that is this will be mostly an internal type of policy, not necessarily external. We'll touch slightly on the external part, mostly probably with communications or when it's permitting or things like that. But we have a range of policies that's already in place. Majority of that already touches on workflow and it already touches on how we do things. So would it not be more beneficial to say, when we look at, for example, our conduct, to add an AI element in this? Because what we are seeing is that people don't take responsibility of the outcome right now. It's, yeah, Copilot or ChatGPT wrote this. Amazing. Did you read it?
Yeah.
Did you edit it? Did you make it your own? Yeah. So instead of having a standalone policy, have something that is already integrated into your workflow and what your organization is. You all have some kind of IT policy that speaks about security and it speaks about that. We all have privacy policies. Can we elaborate on that more to have proper use of AI maybe in there? But what is your take on this?
I agree with you, but I'll twist it a little bit more and add an action that I think every small to medium municipality, if we're staying within that domain of reference, needs to consider. And this again comes at a cost, can be a manageable cost at that too. I don't think people realize how important tabletop exercises and AI drills are to an organization. And you've all heard this, just like we do fire drills, etc. Yeah, you have to do drills when it comes to understanding what happens when an AI model produces something that isn't checked, that isn't verified, and then starts to conduct other jobs as a result of that. There are umpteen number of cases that you can draw from something like we discussed in class, the MITRE Atlas framework, right? In order to really show people and get people to understand, you have to put them through certain scenarios. Training, actual drills, and not doing them as, hey, everybody come into the room and sit for 2 hours and watch us do a tabletop exercise, to actually do it as engaged, gamified drills that might be looped into their day-to-day affairs. For example, looking at security escape rooms, making it into a lunchtime activity, a family activity as well. Very, very powerful. You see, the problem is that a lot of folks, and I don't blame them, is once they put something into a generator, they get the output. Before we lived in search engines where you actually have to do some work to see what's the best recommendation. Now you live with answer engines. So they get the answer and they're happy. And I understand that. Yes, one can say that half the brain is operating on a lazy principle. The other half is just, I have stuff to do. Let's just get this done. We got it, push it out. I understand that. But the more you can immerse people into scenarios which gets them to think and breaks them away from the traditional way of saying, oh, I shouldn't do this. Yeah, don't touch the pot because it's hot, but actually put them in a different scenario where they can experience what it means to actually touch that pot. That's what you have to be engaging with. My biggest flag is, look, you are not, if you want to fight this battle of saying, we will never let our teams use ChatGPT, good luck, because the blind spots that you have are known to you. That one person is going to take a picture of some of the information, go home on their personal laptop, type that in, get a generated response, and then retype that or take a picture. They're going to figure out ways to bypass your observability. The better way is to actually engage them in scenarios where they realize what are the repercussions of not following or not using the LLMs that we have authorized as safe for use within our environments. Policy is great, it states it, but to put it into practice consistently. And I love what I see nowadays in industry. I know it comes at a cost, but I'm seeing a real investment. A lot of firms, from a security perspective, they're not just looking at the layer one, layer twos. They're also looking at those cyber engagement specialists, those training specialists within their firm. And you're seeing now the emergence of AI safety-based roles, AI governance roles, etc. That engagement piece now is going to become extremely important. And for the small to medium municipalities, leveraging some of the associations that are out there, like NISA, etc., can become very powerful engines for them to run some of these really applied, engaging scenario-based trainings where people are living the reality of what can happen when you misuse certain AI models.
And I think that is, I love the point about make this comfortable, make like the same way you drill for an EOC, do the AI tabletops. I love that's brilliant. I think it's awesome. So to close off, there's this thing coming up now about the AI constitution. So we know that Perplexity wrote their own AI constitution. OpenAI, ChatGPT, went to the public and asked for surveys and asked them what they want to put into it. All right. Now they've created their own constitution for their both platforms. There's no government involvement in this. Private sector is currently fueling this. So what is your take on it? What do you think its role, local government's role is in this?
Yeah. Look, I'm taking a pause before even answering this because I think the timeliness of this question cannot be overlooked. Today, whatever the date is, the end of March, believe it or not, of 2026, I think there's nobody over here who's listening to this session that will deny the fact that we are at such a critical juncture, especially if, without speaking too deeply into the politics, especially with what's happening in the Middle East. The fact that AI and the use of AI has become a central topic there The fact that we're now seeing information warfare driven by deep fakes, we're seeing all of these different scenarios. We're literally seeing a narrative being constructed around the global economy that could be entirely driven by AI. I don't think anybody would argue we're at a very critical juncture. I go back to Carney's speech at the Davos summit, if I'm not mistaken, and he said something to the effect of we're stuck between hegemons and hyperscalers. I know this is not the answer, or rather, I don't have the answer that people may be looking for, but I will tell you this much, is that depending on who can outlast whom, you will start to see that a lot of companies, the larger ones, the hyperscalers, may start to dictate the way in which government has to run their AI policies. Because if world economics is going to change the way it is expected to, these hyperscalers, your chip manufacturers, your data engines, your folks that are driving new jobs will push for policies to be in a certain way so that they can continue to drive more products, more processes, and ultimately hire more people. The resource economy is changing. You are seeing the fueling of data, fueling all the different jobs that we're seeing emerge. I think we're going to be in a very critical, dare I say, very dangerous moment where government policy will be entirely dictated by where the jobs can be pushed from the hyperscalers. This is not a moment in history where we can just sit and go like, okay, we'll see where the dust settles and we go on business as usual. The influence is going to be extremely, extremely strong. And I don't say this lightly. I've said it in all my classes through 2025 and even in 2026. The fact that the first day of the presidency was spent, full day of the Trump presidency, was spent talking about Project Stargate, and the level of influence of the large hyperscalers was made abundantly clear. I think this will impact how governments now shape their own policies around AI. I'm being a little bit abstract about it, but I'm going to say this again and again and again. What we are about to see is a complete shift in how AI is understood. And if the companies that are doing most of the hiring, that are doing most of the push around data get their way entirely, I think you will see a lot of policies that are shaped to favorably support job creation, favorably support some of the ideas that are being sprung around with data. And what that means to our humanity at large, if the story with Anthropic is anything to go by, I think we can all rest assured that when the godfather of neural nets, Jeffrey Hinton, warned us we're about to get into an AI arms race, I think he warned us with a lot of wisdom, and he warned us ahead of time for this moment that we're experiencing right now.
It's actually very timely that you bring this up because McKinsey and Company just released a whole report on how consumerism is already changing and how people are believing more whatever AI says in what their product consumption is and what their buying patterns are. So yes, it is already driving the commercial world. And if the bigger players are already writing the constitutions and what the policies are, private sector, you are absolutely correct. It will in some stage try and force its way into public sector as well, which is, yeah, very interesting, fascinating stuff. And another question just popped in that I really want to ask. So, and it might be just a forward throw, nothing that might be available or to be thought of right now, but AI quantum computing.
Yeah. So look, this subject of quantum has been around. We've been talking about it, especially post once COVID settled in. The talk about accessibility to quantum compute. Yes, without a doubt, will quantum compute, when it's made scalable and accessible, will it render most of our cryptographic patterns mute? Yeah, potentially. And we're seeing a lot of papers being published targeting RSA cryptography, etc. The quantum compute with its power, and for those who understand it, yeah, will render a lot of what we typically do in cryptography, to be blatantly honest with you, useless. Yes, the obvious answer is that with more powerful compute, you can do a lot more with AI. You can do a lot more with your generative products, etc. What I advise everyone is to try and understand, though, what the relationships now will be between these pieces of infrastructure and the minerals economy, the resource economy, which is, you're talking about your oils and your gases, and how interdependent all of these are. What I would advise people is that besides understanding the technicalities and getting into post-quantum cryptography and all of those things, like for the NIST model around post-quantum cryptography, that's all great. You should be paying attention to that. But if you have an academic hat on, that interdependency between resources that are required to run large-scale compute and what we're seeing in the world right now, I think will dictate a lot of the patterns that we're seeing with tech. I don't think people truly appreciate what's happening in the world right now and how it can influence access to tech, how it can influence rolling out of tech, and really, the fittest will survive, the strongest will survive, and the kind of power that could come into their hands with elevated compute is truly remarkable, but at the same time, a point of cautionary note. I will not bypass this position that I'm taking right now, which is we are at the cusp of a very, very critical point in our history. 20, 30 years down the road, when we reflect on this, what life was prior to this moment and what it will become will be truly fascinating to see. Hopefully, there's some sense of equity around all of this, but at this point, if someone was to ask me, how am I feeling about all of this? Excessively nervous and excessively scared as well with where all of this might end up going.
Well, with anything that powerful, a healthy form of respect is always good.
You know what? Well said. And look, I completely get it that there's this fascination with how far tech can go, etc. Comes with a lot of power, but power needs to be mediated with some level of control. And at the risk of getting too philosophical, if that absence of control is what is really making me nervous. And when you have a public that is not well informed about how these things work, the repercussions of it are extremely large. And I advise everyone, look at something like 23andMe and look at how a simple nuance like raw data can be deleted, but how many people understand raw versus processed data? So there's just so much that's going on right now. And I'm nervous and scared.
I know, it's like what the International AI Safety Report also mentioned is this is that evidence dilemma that we don't actually know what to do, and that we are expected to create policy where if you look at aviation, all the policies are there is written in blood. They knew what was happening and then created the policy, where in
Absolutely.
AI, we don't know yet we are expected to create the policy and the governance and the framework. And yeah, but all right, I can geek out on this continuously.
I know.
So thank you so much, Ali. It was so great to have you. How
pleasure.
can people get hold of you or reach you if they want to book you for any kind of speaking event or get further advice?
Look, the best way to reach out to me, obviously LinkedIn. And then, I would say LinkedIn would probably be the best way to reach out to me. And I usually respond within a day. If I don't respond within a day or two, then as I've said in class, call 911 at that point of time. But yeah, I would say LinkedIn, and you can drop my profile link when you post this session that we've had. That would be the best way to get a hold of me.
Sounds great. Well, thank you so much, Ali. It is absolutely a pleasure and honor to have you here. And I love geeking out with you. It is just amazing. I thoroughly enjoyed your class, and I think it was one of the best yet. So thank you so much.
You're very kind. You only say that because you see the good in everything around you. And I want to appreciate what you're doing, because these short pieces of information, even if there's a single piece of this that somebody can hold on to and it helps them build their AI strategy independently and with some confidence, it goes a very, very long way. I think right now the need for very conscious leadership cannot be understated. So thank you for your leadership. Appreciate it.
That's awesome. Well, my name is Daphne Thomson. If there's anything else that you guys would like to hear, please leave it in the comments. Until next time, have a great one.
Cheers.